Well, I'll give you an example here that we've recently been working on. So there's a project going on the northeast corner of Gilbert Road and the 202 freeway. It's a property owned by a company called Nationwide. It's a very, very large parcel of land, and when I first came on board, the Nationwide folks really approached me before I even took oath in office, trying to get an understanding of my position as relates to what I would call incentives that would be part of a land development agreement. What they were asking for was way, way out of bounds, in my opinion. And that property literally just sat there. Being on council for 3 years, probably about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, when we talk about economic development, that parcel of land is literally the gateway into what we call the 202 business corridor. So in thinking about attracting large businesses or retaining large businesses, what really kicked this whole thing off for me was when we lost Infusionsoft. And Infusionsoft was a software development company right by my home over on the northwest side of town. They were trying to find a large office space to account for their growth in their company. And when they said that they couldn't find one, and then the town manager, economic development team, the mayor, and myself spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to solve this, and we couldn't solve it because we had nothing, that was already ready build in Gilbert at that point, and we lost Fusionsoft to Chandler. And at that point, for us, we said we've got to solve this problem somehow. So this goes back to the Nationwide, that corner of that property. So, anyways, in working with them, a plan came up. If there was going to be any incentives given to any business, doesn't matter who it is, those incentives would be based upon performance. And those performance metrics would be measured, and if they met those measurements, then the tax incentives that they got were to be given to them. So for Nationwide, the goal was to create large amount of office spaces that was in that 100,000 to 1 million square foot range was kind of the thought to do that. But 100,000 square foot was really the focus on. Multi-story, high vertical type of office complex, and that was going to be really what we call the gateway to the 202. That to me was the area that we wanted to focus on to start really the initiative to grow the 202 business corridor for us. And that would be what we'll call the gem or the jewel of that activity. So for us, going back to Nationwide, to give them the incentive to build those 100,000 square foot to 1 million square foot, office complex, grow vertical, we put in place what I call incentives that were based upon performance as part of the land development agreement, so that they would be able to build, that type of infrastructure for us, at least a business. With that being said, we can't announce this yet, but there is a very large company that could occupy that spot for us because of those incentives, bringing in potentially about 1,000 jobs into Gilbert. So to me, that's the type of, I call, business incentives that I can agree to. It minimizes, to me, the risk of the taxpayer dollars, but the return on the investment that I see in doing that type of incentive is huge. Because what that would hopefully do is that when that grows into a large, what I call business complex, it's just going to grow more to the east. So Gilbert Road, east along the 202, that's the start of what I would consider the beginning of our, economic development for attracting or retaining, larger businesses. Well, I think I get my thoughts about it, but that to me, my thought is when I look at build out for Gilbert, and I see the amount of what I call vacant commercial property in Gilbert, one of the hardest things for me as a council member is trying to take what our existing commercial that we have, and there's different categories of commercial, from retail to light commercial to heavy commercial, you name it. I cannot get from the state of Arizona the data that tells me, based upon so many square feet of that type of commercial, how much tax revenue are we generating from these different categories of commercial. What I'm trying to do is, it relates to forecasting into the future, I want to superimpose those dollars onto our vacant property to see what type of generation of revenue that we'll get. Because at that point, I'll know better when we get the build out if we have enough revenue coming in without raising taxes or raising fees in Gilbert. So my focus is, because I don't have that data, growing commercial, attracting large businesses, competing. I hate to say compete because I know the mayor likes to be very friendly to our neighbors, but when we compete with our neighbors for those large businesses, I want them to come to Gilbert. I want to figure out how to attract those types of businesses to come so that I can make sure that we minimize our taxes as long as possible for the highest level service that we provide.